He had joined, a 20-year-old, as a personal aide for Anand, the younger son of Mr. Malhotra, the owner of the Malhotra's conglomerate. Mr. Malhotra's business ranged from making incense sticks to owning oil refineries. Raju originally came from a rundown and derelict village on the eastern part of India. He was quite striking to look at given his humble background. The youngest of three brothers, he had always been the go-to person, the one who could think of quick fixes to everyday problems, important or otherwise. He was of average height and had a light brown complexion and deep-set bright black eyes and an angular mouth. He had flunked his college examination and had come in search of work to begin a new life in this busy city. Raju had two striking features. He was a stickler for discipline. He was always on time and was always smartly and neatly dressed and had oodles of confidence. He knew from his interaction with his surroundings that he would make it in this world. He had to begin from a failure. He could no longer concentrate on his studies after his elder brother, who worked as a mason, fell from a 12th floor of a building and passed away and left behind two mouths to feed, his wife and 5-month-old child. The daily bickering in the house over money nibbled at him. His father and the other elder brother worked at a distillery. He was married too, with twin daughters. Raju was a quick learner and he had a passive friend Albert in the city, whom he had met in the local train. Albert was as agile as him and both of them were experts in boarding the overflowing local trains. Albert had gone to a school where English was a medium of communication, and he had a fine grasp of the language. Raju had always wanted to be fluent in Hindi and English. The former he learned from television and his mobile, and the latter he learned from Albert. Albert was a kitchen help of the Mistries, who were the owners of the largest packaged drinking water. Raju and Albert both were recruits of the famous Cooks and Maids, which provided efficient kitchen and domestic helps to the rich and the famous of the city. At 6 o'clock in the morning, it was Raju's duty to bring purified holy water to Anand, who was so devout that he sprinkled holy water after he came out of his bed, the first thing in the morning. Then he went for his morning run. He had his water with soaked seeds after he was back from his run and went to prepare for the day ahead. Raju was happy with his job. It paid him well, though he had to be available for Anand any time he called him. He put up in the servant quarters in the basement, which was a cozy small room with a small balcony, a kitchen and adjacent toilet. Raju lived a king's life in comparison to his folk at home. He had developed a camaraderie with Anand over the years. Raju had not been to his village for 5 years. He had bought smartphones for his parents and talked with them over video calls. He never missed them. He regularly sent them a third of his salary and they almost worshipped him and waited for his calls and his money. He had heard how his family would build a room for him in his house in the additional floor that they shall build with his money. They never wanted to perturb him with their regular woes and he discouraged them further. The villagers were finding it very hard to make ends meet. The fields were turning infertile with overuse of fertilizers. The previous year, crops were destroyed by the flood. The pandemic had closed down many of the small-time businesses and the men were back, another mouth to feed and no income. They spent most of their time hooked to their mobiles. They would form a gang and indulge in games and either work for the notorious IT cell for pittance. The cleverer of them were getting recruited by small-time fraudsters to indulge in phishing crimes and sextortion. Police would assemble them up every other day and beat them to death or black and blue and extract the money from them. Earlier, it was booze the wives had to fight against. Now it was their affair with their mobile phones. Most of the houses went with less food on the table than they needed. Raju's family, on the other hand, was getting more prosperous by the day. They ate the best vegetables, wore the best clothes, and Raju worked for the Malhotras. He never visited the village, but had become one of the most rich and famous in his village, albeit much lesser than the Sarpacha. The only profession left in the village was to be a political goon and fight, kill and maim each other during elections. The mayhem started when Raju's father expressed his desire to add another floor to their small house. They need to have additional rooms for Raju when he came back or after he married. He was in no mood for any suggestion for marriage. Any remote suggestion of marriage would bring insinuations about the result of getting his dead elder brother married off so early. The whole village seethed in anger and jealousy. Added to all their woes, the distillery where Raju's father and brother worked was discharging untreated sewage in the river water, even though it had a zero discharge certificate which it renewed every year by bribe. The water in the river, which formed the lifeline of their village, was slowly changing color. Raju's father had received promotion to supervisor given his age and years of experience and also because his son worked for the Malhokras. The discharge of effluents was common knowledge in the village. They requested the Sarpanch to intervene multiple times to no avail. Many people in the village used the water for bathing. The water, day by day, became so filthy that it was rendered unusable. Many people even drank water from hand pumps. The water from hand pumps turned blackish yellow and people started complaining of ailments, sores, and ulcers from either bathing in or consuming the water. The workers in the distillery decided to go on strike to protest against the water pollution. Raju's father, basking in his son's glory, opposed the strike. The workers' union requested Raju's father twice, one even visiting their home, but heard about how he was against the culture of strikes and how it was an obsolete weapon nowadays. Then came the fateful day. Raju's father had befriended the Sarpanch. The Sarpanch visited their house regularly and they both were against the absolutely lazy villagers, who always found a pretext to skip work. The Sarpanch wanted to be in the good books of Raju's family. They were contented in their higher social status. Raju's father had called up the management informing them about the workers' strike and the owners of the sugar factory had threatened to terminate the employment of those who participated in the protest. Raju woke up early that day. The darkness was fading. It was his favorite time of the day. He did his regular stretches and went about his daily routine. Rejuvenated by the early morning cold shower, he went up to Anand's room in the Malhokra residence. He rang the bell and it was Pooja, Anand's fiancée, who opened the door. Pooja said they had come in late from yesterday's party and Anand would wake up late. Pooja went back to sleep in the adjacent room. Raju took out the jar of holy water which was brought in from the holy river source and filtered it using the portable row filter. Raju's father was firm that he would go to work that day despite his brother's requests not to be so stubborn and bring risk to his life. He found a sudden loyalty which the owners never ever felt for these employees. They were expendables, but the owner's son was so polite to him, he thought he was considered someone close to the Malhokra family. He dressed and took his lunchbox folded in a white cloth in his jute sling bag, which was a gift from Raju, and walked away. Lakia had lost his toddler daughter a few months back due to infection she had developed from the dirty water, which they used for bathing and washing. Even if they boiled the water, it was still filthy. Today, as he walked towards the factory gate, the helpless doctor's tears, his wife's wailings, came up before his eyes and propelled him into absolute rage, and just as he saw Raju's father trying to get in, he pulled him by the collar. He had known him from his childhood and called him Chacha, but today was different. Today he was the defeated father avenging his dear child's death. Blows and kicks followed in quick succession, and by the time mediators ran in and rescued the old man, he had lost his consciousness. Raju filtered the holy water. Anand would wake up late today. He poured the water in a silver glass and went down to have his tea and breakfast. These late night sorries Pooja loved to go to. They started after 10 and would go on till 3 in the morning. That meant Anand would wake up very late that day and would miss his morning run and so would remain irritated throughout the day. Raju went outside at the tea joint on the opposite side of the house and struck up a conversation with the cook who was a regular at that time. They went on about the Cold War already instigated between the would-be mother-in-law and daughter-in-law and how wonderfully they camouflaged their differences in front of the camera, and had a laugh about it. The cook congratulated him on what he called was his holiday today. The cook went back but he waited for his call and chatted on with the shop owner over cups of tea. The shop owner was a widower and was cooking rice at the other stove for his daughter's lunch. Raju felt like marrying after he saw how happy Anand was since his engagement with Pooja. It instills a new belief in oneself if one has such a beautiful and intelligent spouse. Both he and the tea maker were weary about finding marriageable girls these days. The good ones are so ambitious. They both wanted to leave the decision to their parents. Their experience would choose the best for them. They agreed. Meanwhile, Raju's brother was carrying his father in an auto and roaming around from one hospital to another. The primary healthcare center was run by quacks as there was no doctor for close to 2 years now. The quack there said he needed oxygen and needed to be rushed to a hospital immediately. There were 4 hospitals within 2 kilometers in the town about 20 minutes away. One of the hospitals did not have bed. The other was on a junior doctor's strike over poor hostel conditions and so no one to attend in the emergency. No one cared for an old ailing poor man in India. They were always collateral damage. Damage in national protests, in lockdowns and everywhere. The other hospital admitted him but his oxygen level had dropped to such a low by then that when Raju was relying on him to choose a bride for him, he was taking his last breaths. He passed away on his eldest son's lap in the hospital. Raju got a call at last. It was Anand in a fury. Why is there a fly in the water? He was shouting. Raju jumped up 2 stairs at a time to get a second glass of purified water for him. He went and threw the water away, washed the silver glass and gave him a second glass of purified holy water to sprinkle on himself, just as the phone rang. I need to attend a very urgent meeting. Anand was in his irky worst. Raju switched the phone off. The day was very busy in the office for Anand. There were urgent meetings and constant drives around the city. He had to chaperone him at all these places. He had earned this place after years of perseverance. He did not indulge in gossip and small talk, and he knew which information to withhold, and he was overtly grateful for the job. The traffic jams and the hangover gave Anand a nasty headache, and so he had to be ready with coffee every hour. There was gossip about some fights erupting at a factory outlet of one of his acquaintances. How the labor unions and their strikes sent this country to the dogs. Even good wages and overtimes and celebration bonuses do not satisfy them, and they wreak havoc of the factory at the drop of a hat. Raju could hear bits and pieces of the conversation and was getting frightened. It was a sugar factory, he said. He had left his mobile in the hall in Anand's apartment in a hurry and he kept praying it be not related to him. He was not as devoted as Anand, but like the rest of us, whose prayers are never answered and still they go on praying and thank divinity for little crumbles the divine energy gathers for us. Anand called it a day after 9:26 that evening. He had promised to have dinner with his mother. The sorries were almost always followed by dinner with his mother. Raju saw 21 calls in his mob. His brother. Anand was such a nice soul. He hugged Raju, gave him 10,000 rupees and asked him to take his Alto and start off. Anand had learned to drive in these 5 years and had a license. As he started out, tears in his eyes and feverish in anger with himself, Anand went to bed. He was up at midnight, sweating. He was dreaming that he was drowning in black slime. He tried to get up, but Raju was holding him down, every time. He knew he had lost Raju's respect today, and so with a sad heart he decided that he had to replace him. He drank from his bottle, which Raju had filled for him, after they had come back and before he had taken up his phone, and went back to sleep. His mother was in a panic at his dream and called up the astrologer immediately to get a solution. The astrologer mentioned a famous mandir in the east they had to visit and perform a certain puja and everything would get back on track. Raju was a novice when it came to driving. He could not drive well as he found all the energy sucked out from him. Tears blurred his vision and he had hunger pangs despite his grief. He took a hold of himself. He understood whatever he did would not alter the fact that he would never find his Baba alive again, not hug him, not touch his feet to seek blessings again. He was gone. They had already cremated him. Still he was conditioned to believe that it was his slight of duty to forget his mobile. The whole day he had to use the driver's mobile to catch up with Anand. He stopped at a dhaba and had roti, angry at his hunger, and started off again. This was his first long drive, and how he wished it had not come to be this day, the day he lost his father in such a way. The life in cities and villages was so different. It's almost impossible for Raju to imagine that his father was not given oxygen for most of the 2.5 hours that he was alive, and it was given too late. The night got darker and the road was broken and potholed. Raju had to drive slow and cautious. Sometimes he wanted to burn the car down and set fire to himself at his slack, but he breathed slowly, calmed himself down, and understood that even though he lived at the Malhotra address, he lived at the basement and was dispensable. Like the train always has the coach for the differently abled and the general compartment just after the engine and at the end, for the dispensable, he was redundant too. He tried on. He was feeling drowsy after dinner, and all these big trucks laden with goods and oil and what else were whooshing past him, scaring him. He knew it was a bad day for his brother and mother, having lost his father unnecessarily in the ruckus. Why did he have to go to the factory today? The old man. Had he not been Raju's father, would he have got the promotion? Raju debated with himself. If not, he would not have garnered the courage to take on the factory workers. He would not have considered himself more powerful than the rest. He would have sided with the helpless Lakia. All of them knew Lakia was not in his senses after losing his daughter. None of them gained from this fight, but these Malhotras and their friends. They always managed to escape, and the like of Lakia and his father bear the brunt of their offenses, their sins. Raju thought for a while. He would leave the job. He has saved enough to buy a cab, and he would drive that henceforth. Two headlights from the truck in front glared at him, and he swerved.